Manhood is a very damaging patriarchal construct. And I understand that people will take issue with that, but when you look at what manhood is, and you look at how men, particularly in the States, describe manhood, you will see exactly why I say that manhood is a damaging patriarchal construct. It damages men and those within men's range. It's toxic. It is not truly fulfilling. It's about control, illusions, dominating everything within your reach. It is extremely destructive, and I stand by my statement in which I say that manhood is a damaging patriarchal construct. And if anyone disagrees with that, I'd be interested in hearing why. But, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We actually discussed this on our last show, Mending Men and Women's Relationships, the male focus. And we went into detail, our guest speaker went into detail about that. And our guest speaker was a male as well, so yeah, it's damaging. And I understand that a lot of men will take issue with that. I understand that there are women who will take issue with that. And I also understand that many have been brainwashed to believe a certain way, to think a certain way. And so I'm not surprised that anyone would take issue with something that doesn't align with the predominant culture's promoted views, you know? But manhood is very toxic. And like I said, I'll just refer you back to our last show. Check that out and respond. Check that out, and then I think you will understand more as to what I'm speaking about. And that's my little word for today, for this morning. A few people wanted me to elaborate, and I'm like, well, we elaborated in the show. So definitely check that out, and let me know your thoughts. All right, have a good day.
All right, thank you all for joining us tonight. You are joining Daughter Divine. For those who are first timers, I just want to let you all know a little bit of what Daughter Divine is about. We are for healing on all levels, physical, mental, and spiritual. So that's what we represent. And with our shows, we do address various topics that have to do with everything ranging from spiritual, societal issues, mental and relationships, various things. So tonight we are going to be discussing mending men and women's relationships with our special guest, David Brayboy. So how are you tonight? And I want to thank you for joining us as well.
Well, I would like to thank you for inviting me, and it's an honor to be here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay.
Yes, definitely. I saw, I've seen a few of your posts, and I'm like, you definitely are onto something. So I'm like, I've got to get him, on a show with us so we can discuss, because we want more of that male presence, just with Daughter Divine. We want it to be a balance of both. And so I definitely want to start bringing more males in so we can discuss solutions and things that are going on, and ways that we can, mend relationships and just various different topics. So thank you for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
All right. So I guess the first thing that we're going to speak on in regards to this is respect, because I know that was the post that I saw that really made me say, I've got to have him on the show. When you were speaking of things that will kind of make it to where a woman may not respect you as a man, or you know just you remember your post. If you could just speak a
Yeah.
little bit on what you were saying and what you meant by that.
Well, my post had said, Black women, in fact, only can respect a black man who is more intellectual and less emotional. In this, she knows and understands that she has someone who is not only responsible and intelligent, but beyond the madness of what causes our community to morally crumble in failure, including their home front. Now, what was meant by this is that not only can a black woman respect a man who is more intellectual and less emotional, also being more intellectual and less emotional, he puts himself in the position to be an example to not only her, but his children, male or female. So in that, him exercising intelligence over his, you know, um, emotional responses is if he has a daughter, she can look at him and says, "Man, that's my dad." And if by him being such a good example, he seems to always be in control of himself because he's so intelligent, and his intelligence always seems to supersede his emotional reactions. And therefore, if he has a daughter, she's going to say, once I meet someone or once I get out here in the world, I would like to have a man who reflects my father. And his son would look at him in the same fashion, that I respect my father so much, I would love to reflect him as a man because he's more intellectual and less emotional. And I think one of the primary issues that we have in our community as black men is that we have, not to be making excuses, but due to the fact that we've struggled so much and so much is denied us, a lot of our brothers have become more emotional and less intellectual, and frustration tends to take over and taps into our emotions, and it gets to the point to where that becomes a screen, and we see everything and respond to everything through an emotional complex other than an intellectual one. And what a woman respects is a man who is more intelligent and less emotional. And the reason why I put it less emotional instead of non-emotional is because he should be able to express emotion, love, respect, and everything towards her, as well as his children, and still have that balance of intelligence and respect and love and compassion and all of those things that makes him a complete human being, to where he's in touch with both sides of his natural instincts, which is his masculinity and also his feminine nature that he inherited from his mother and the divine. So,
Right. I love the way you put that,
mhm.
because a lot of people would assume that by less emotional, you
Hmm.
mean non-emotional. So I
Right.
like that you did that because I think people need to understand there's a balance in it. You
Hmm.
know, it's not that a man cannot show emotions or anything like that, and it's not that showing emotions makes him weak, but
Right.
there has to be a balance.
Hmm.
So,
Actually, it takes a strength for a man to show emotion and compassion and even vulnerability. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of our brothers have been raised up by men from the mid 60s and the struggling, you might as well say the struggling 60s, as well as the 70s, where we had just came out of the civil rights movement. And so a whole lot of brothers were hurt, a whole lot of brothers were angry, confused. They was getting into um, they were using drugs, they were selling drugs. Um, they became hustlers, they became pimps, you know. And by me coming up in Chicago, I saw all of these things. And what I saw was a lot of brothers who were egotistical, they was angry, you know, and they felt as though showing any type of emotion or any type of compassion towards women, or even showing any type of kindness or even any level of compassion towards their brother, that it showed a weakness and vulnerability in them, when that's absolutely not true. Because considering what they've been taught through the years by those before them, that taught them that all of those attributes are attributes of weakness when it comes to men. If they really would see um, the responses and the results of all of those things, they would know that those keeping those type of attributes inside is what really caused a whole lot of our homes to experience a whole lot of domestic violence, divorces, um, women going outside their homes, to try to find good men when they had men at home who were abusive, not only physically abusive, but psychologically and emotionally abusive, because they needed that love, they needed that respect, you know. And a whole lot of these men were destroying their families without them even realizing it. And from those guys in the 70s, and it affected the women. And so as time went on, you go into the 80s, and then you have these young kids who were born in the 80s and they're going into the 90s, and you wonder why these kids are angry. And you wonder why you have the Tupacs and the Easy E's and all of these angry kids. And then once you look around and you happen to meet one of them, you like, why you guys rapping like that? And see, and they will tell you, we're rapping about what's going on in the hood. So they're telling you it's really not our fault. This was the environment that we were made to come up in. And so when you have an environment like that to come up in, it's missing a whole lot of human elements that would have made the environment a whole lot more pleasant to live in. And those elements were the men being more intellectual, more compassionate, and more respectable to the women. I think that had a whole lot of our brothers would had not hadn't been afraid to express their more gentle side and the more compassionate side. I think, as a matter of fact, I don't have to think. I know because I'll be 55 years old this coming January. But I was also a child born into the world where I had a very um, acute awareness of what was going on around me, and so I was paying attention to everything. I was paying attention to what my uncles was talking about, what my aunts was talking about, what my great grandmother and my mother was talking about. I would sit in the barbershops and listen to men talk. I would stand on the corners along with a whole lot of brothers who I didn't even know and just watch them shoot dice. And I would listen to their conversation, and I didn't hear any respect. And it seemed like everyone was trying to, promote themselves as being hard and I'm a hard dude, I ain't soft and stuff like that. Well, that's probably one of the reasons why you walking around so angry all the time, so rigid, and all of these things. And that's another reason why primarily you go home and your wife is not happy. You need to be able to embrace both sides of yourself in order for you to be a man that is productive in every area of your life.
That's very, very true. It's like that energy is being suppressed.
Hmm.
And so it's coming out as, or it's being suppressed. So the anger is like kind of like overflowing or like boiling over, so to speak.
Hmm.
And I guess in regards to, you said you would hear these conversations, like, what did you think, like, when you heard these? Because I've heard some crazy things, different conversations in families and, barbershops, salons, and things like that. So, as a male, how did you take those types of things? Were you always like, did you always know this, or did you always at least feel this within yourself, or were you kind of like along, kind of believing in those types of things, or I don't know, how did you feel about things that were being said? What types of things were being said?
Well, as eccentric as this may sound, um, I was raised up by mostly women, because both of my parents were married, and my both of my parents had divorced when I was 2 years old, and both of my parents were guilty of infidelity. And so um, I had a great grandmother. Her name was Rebecca Kelly, and she was telling both of my parents, "Look, until you guys get y'all act together, you bring them babies over here." And so I had an older sister named Becky. And so what my mother did, she took us over there, and my great grandmother pretty much raised everybody. So it was a house full. It was a 5 bedroom home in Chicago on the South Side in an area called Chatham Village. And so within that home was full of a bunch of children that were, you might as well say, rescued by my great grandmother, because the adults became very irresponsible. And so what had happened was, by my uncles living there with me, I had four uncles living there, and I had 3 aunts living there. And so coming up in an environment like that, and you're a kid that's very reclusive and very quiet, it only means that you're really not saying a whole lot. You're doing mostly a lot of listening. You're listening a whole lot. And so I would this sounds kind of funny, but I used to crawl up under my great grandmother's bed, especially when I knew that my aunt Ruth was coming over with her friends, because every week my great grandmother and them would get in her room, and they would have conversations. It would be my great grandmother, it would be my mother, sometimes it would be my aunt Ruth, who always showed up, and it would be my cousin Barbara and my cousin Eunice, just a bunch of highly intelligent, very outspoken women. And I would be up under the bed, and I'm listening to all these women talk. And through a whole lot of these discussions, they would tell me the various experiences that they had with men. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And what a whole lot of them had in common as far as their complaints was concerned, is that men were acting as though they were afraid to express themselves about how they felt about them, but they never had a difficulty in expressing themselves in a whole lot of other areas that leaned upon the masculine area, like sports and all that other stuff that really doesn't benefit you at all, but just takes up a whole lot of time. And so I'm like, okay, I'm listening to all of this. And then when everybody would leave, all of a sudden my great grandmother would hear me crawling out from under the bed. She said, "Boy, you was under there all that time listening to us?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." I said, "I liked what y'all was talking about." And so with listening to them, I would also go downstairs to my uncle's room, to where all of my uncles would talk. And I had an uncle named Shorty who used to deal with a whole lot of different women and stuff like that. And I had okay, it was my uncle Shorty, James Kelly, Shorty, James, Keith, and Kevin. So I would sit in their room and I would listen to them. And so I'm like, okay, that sounds okay, but I'm not taking that in. You know, that's cool, but I would do that in a whole different way. And then from there, I would, like I mentioned before, I would listen to people outside of my family, and I would listen, and I got you might as well say, um, a 33-degree understanding of how the basic fundamental male thought. And I'm like, okay. And then I had compared them. I said, what do I feel? Where do I lean upon mostly mentally and intellectually? And by me having a strong love for women, I'm like, well, I would rather be the type of man that my great grandmother admired, my Aunt Ruth and everybody, the type of men that they said that a man is supposed to be and a man should be. And then I'm going inside of myself. Well, that's exactly how I am, because every woman that I've ever dealt with, I will boldly say and say and confidently that I never mess around on any other woman that I had relationships with, because I've always had a very strong love for women. I've always had a lot of respect for women. And I tell a lot of young guys out here that if you don't respect the woman that you're with, you can't say that you care about her. And if you don't care about her, you can't tell me that you love her. Because if you don't respect her first, it means you don't care about what affects her. And if you don't care about what affects her, you can't convince her that you love her. And that, I got that from being up under my great grandmother's bed, listening to these women, these beautiful, wise women talk. And I'm like, see, what they talked about hit home with me. And so because of those different areas of learning and having good examples of intelligent men like Brother Malcolm X and stuff like that, and looking at myself as a good example, because of I've always felt good about choosing what I feel would make me a great man, because I felt like I have to be not only a good man, but I have to be a gentleman at the same time. It's pretty much the same as I tell a lot of women out here. I can look at you and tell that you're a woman, but are you a lady? See, the lady is one that is within. The woman is what you're looking at outside. You know, and so coming up under all of that, and being a sponge brain, like my mother used to call me. She used to tell me that I'm gonna start calling you sponge brain because you always walking around, you soaking up all of this information. But soaking up all of that information is one of the primary reasons why I'll be 55 January 20th, and I've never been arrested. I've never been arrested.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Can I share something with you right quick?
Yeah, definitely.
Um, I used to drive the bus, right? I used to drive the city bus out here in Las Vegas, and I met a young lady out here. Her name was Tanya, and I used to call her Debbie Allen because she looked so much like Debbie Allen. And so she had got on my bus numerous times, and we would have discussions and stuff. And then one day she just came right out and said, "David, when are we going to go out?" And so I said, "Well, you want to go out?" She said, "Yeah." And so she gave me her address and everything. And so I told her when we were going to go out, and I told her what time I was going to be there. I told her, I said, "I'm going to be there at 8 o'clock. Please be ready." And so when I got there, it was 8 o'clock, and I pulled up in front of her place, and I called her by cell phone. And I told her, I said, "Well, are you ready?" And she said, "Well, can you come in for a few minutes?" And I'm like, "Uh oh." I said, "Yeah, I'll come in." And so I knock on her door. She opens up, and she's in her little nightgown. She's in this white see through nightgown. And behind her, she had her 2-year old daughter sitting on her living room floor, and she was down there playing with her toys. And so she said that my sister was supposed to have babysat for me. And I said, "Well, you can bring your daughter, if you want." I said, "I don't care. I don't care about that. She can come." And she said, "No, no. Um, she's supposed to be coming by here to pick her up." She said, "You can go ahead and sit down." I said, "Okay." So I sat down. I think it was about 17 minutes went by. And then the next thing you know, there's a knock on the door. And she says, "Can you get that for me?" And I told her, "No, I cannot." So she came out of the bathroom, and she opened up the door, and it was her daughter's father. And she started ranting all off, cussing him out and all of that. And "I told you to be here, such a thing, so you can pick her up, blah, blah, blah." She was just going off on him. And so he came in, and he was one of these guys who you would consider a thug. But he came in and he looked over at me, and he said, "How you doing, man?" I'm like, "I'm okay," you know. But when I looked at this young man, I saw so much pain in his eyes, you know. And so she got through cussing him out, and so she had picked up a little girl and gave her to him, and he walked out. And then she's was talking about him to me, and then she went on back in the restroom, you know to finish getting ready, I guess. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, this don't feel right. This doesn't feel right. And so I go outside to talk to him, and he is getting in the car, and he's got about three of his friends with him. And so he's getting in the back seat. No, he's getting in the passenger seat, in the front seat of the car. And so I go to the driver's seat, and I ask the other guy to lower the window, and he felt like he's supposed to be tough. "Nigga, what you want? Whoa, 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 you know what you?" I like, "Look, man, I'm not here for all that." And so I looked over at him. I said, "Can I speak to you for a second?" He said, "Why you want to speak to me?" I said, "I just want to speak to you." I said, just give me a couple of seconds." And so he gets out the car, and of course he's in front of his friends, so he's got to have that walk, that thug type walk. And so he gets in front of me. He stumps one foot, throws his arm down, and said, "What you want, man?" I told him, I said, "Look, do you still love that woman?" And as soon as I said that, he broke. He broke down. And he said, "Yeah, man, I still love her." And he's crying. See that ego and that masculine side, it broke, because of my approach to him. I'm not gonna go there with you, you know. And he broke down, and so I put hand, one of my hands on his shoulders, and next thing you know, all of his buddies got out the car. They're like, "What's going on out here?" And so I just chose to ignore them. And I asked him, I said, "Look me in the eyes. Look at me." And so he looked at me, his tears was just flowing. I like, "Look, if you still love that woman, you need to go in there and work this out." I said, "Because this is just not about you and her. This is about that little girl in that back seat." He said, "I don't know what to do." I said, "And I'm not the one to try to advise you what to do about your family." I said, "But it's one thing that I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be a part of your pain, bro. I'm not going to be a part of your pain. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like for your family unit to be destroyed. I know what it feels like." And so he hugged me, and his buddies was looking at him like, "Man, what's going on?" And after we unembraced, I got in my car and I drove off. I'm not going to be a part of that. See, now, the reason why I bring all of that up is because I could have easily just let him walk out. I could have easily, shoot, I don't care nothing about that. That's his problem. If he can't keep his woman, that's his problem. Nah, bro, it's your problem too. What type of human being are you? Are you going to see this man? You don't have to know what's going on, but you went through this yourself. So are you going to be so caught up in that hardness and that I'm a man and this, or are you going to allow yourself to stay in touch with the feminine part of yourself? Now, I know a whole lot of brothers will say, "Oh, that dude talking about being gay." That's not what I'm talking about at all. That's talking about being very much in touch with both sides of your nature.
Right.
I know where my compassionate side comes from because I've studied the male and female long enough to know. And I've been around women all of my life. And I know that it's because I was raised by women with intelligence and wisdom and compassion. That's one of the reasons why that I'm a man to where I understand both male and female. And I understand that a lot of these brothers are walking around right now doing a lot of violence to themselves because they reject it, and like you said earlier, they suppress that part of themselves. And that's one of the reasons why you walking around, you don't have any humility, you don't have any compassion, and it's hard for you to hold on to a woman because you feel as though you have to rule over her. "Well, I'm supposed to be the head of my house." You can be the head of your house and you can still be the head of your house. The only thing you have to do is be responsible and do what you're supposed to do. And
Right.
just because someone calls you a king doesn't mean that it puts you in a position to where you have to rule over her, because no one in that house is resisting you. So what's this? I'm I'm the king of the house, and I'm not. See, that comes from all that madness that those before you have taught you. You have to be in control. Look, if you have to be constantly in control of something, you need to leave it alone. Because if that woman is there and if she's loving you, and there's a flow of love and respect between you and her, brother, you don't have to control anything. Everything is flowing within itself. So let go and just be yourself. Allow yourself to feel some compassion. Allow yourself to feel some love, and um just be yourself. That's one of the reasons why I'm as old as I am. And if you were to see me in person, I look like I'm in my mid 30s. I don't have any high blood pressure. I don't have any health problems. I mean, I was in a motorcycle accident when I was in 2014, and I came back strong. And it's only because of my not being afraid to be my entire full self, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Can you kind of expound on that balancing the feminine energy
Hmm.
and the masculine energy when it comes to males? Because, like you said, they don't necessarily understand that. And I would say that it's about going within. As far as the feminine energy, it represents the things that are unseen,
Right.
the soul. Um, Facing that I guess some would say darkness within yourself, facing those things like you did with the guy, what you just explained, that story, when you went to him and you asked him if he still loved her, and
Hmm.
I think that was a great thing to do, because like you said, you did tap into that feminine energy by doing that. That was something that you saw within him. You said you saw the pain within his eyes, and so you did go to him and you did ask him that question, and then it just came out.
Hmm.
So, can you kind of explain a little bit more for the males? Um, I guess maybe in a way they'd understand
Okay.
when it comes to balancing that feminine and masculine energy.
Number one, you have to throw away everything that you've been taught, everything. And you have to go inside, and you have to be able to go inside and still be able to walk in the world itself. You have to throw all of, I mean, even the things that we've accumulated through Hollywood, especially through these black exploitation movies with the Superfly and the Pimp, man, get all of that trash out of your mind, because that was implanted in the theaters so that it would be implanted in you. And I saw that because when I was coming up in the 70s, everybody wanted to be the Mac. Everybody wanted to be Superfly. Everybody wanted to be these characters. And who paid the price for that? A lot of women paid the price for that. Now there were some women who were guilty of playing into those things. But if you look at a lot of those women, a lot of those women were abused, and so they were looking for someone to take care of them, to show some compassion. Yeah, but this guy here, the way that he's thinking, the compassion that he's showing you, that's all game. That's all a lie. I would tell a whole lot of males, and I've told them numerous times, don't be afraid to show some compassion. Don't be afraid to love your woman. Don't be afraid to understand her completely. Throw away all of the garbage that you have been taught all of your life by, I'm sorry, it could be your father, it could be your uncles, it could be some of your uncle's friends, it could be these movies, it could be, you have to throw all of those things away and focus on who and what you are. What do you, what type of man do you want to be? And then you have to go inside and look at yourself. Okay, what at this point, presently, what type of man am I? And then once you honestly investigate yourself, and if you can look at yourself and say, these things I could change. And what things did you change? What things do you have to change? Well, I have to change this. Well, where did you get that? Well, this is what I told, my dad told me, my uncles. Okay, get rid of that garbage. Get rid of that. Stop carrying all of that baggage. Get to know who you are, what you are, especially. I told a guy, he was telling me, I don't got no feminine qualities in me. I said, well, do you have a mother? He said, yeah, I got a mother. I said, well, do you have some of your mother's ways? And he got quiet. I said, do you have some of your mother's ways? He says, yes. Well, isn't your mother a woman? Yes. Isn't she a part of the feminine, you know? nature? He says yes. Oh, say okay. What makes you think that that part is not sitting up in you? Stop denying it. I'm not saying walking around talking like a woman or acting like one,
And I think
but
that's like a common misconception that a lot of men have. It's like
yeah.
when you talk about feminine energy, they automatically go to the image of the woman that's promoted in media today. You
Hmm.
know, the high heels and, all of that, just, wearing dresses. And it's like, no, that's not, to me, that has nothing to do with feminine energy. You
No.
know, that's just an image, that's just something that has been put out there.
Hmm.
So, for I would also say the men should look at the lives of the men who preach that I have no feminine in me, and this
Hmm.
is how you control a woman and all this stuff. Like, look at their relationships, look at the state of their relationships. How are those relationships that
Hmm.
they're in? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You know, things could go a whole lot more smoother if our brothers would embrace their whole selves and throw away all of the propaganda. Just embrace yourself, because there's another picture that I put up, and it has this African guy sitting in this seat, and it has some women at his feet. And numerous times I've heard people say, a man cannot be a king unless he has a queen. And since we deal with a lot of this king and queen talk nowadays, I don't think people understand exactly what that really means, you know, because it's basically saying that he has no power at all unless she is present, pretty much. And her submission to him is what gives him his power. And a lot of people don't want to accept that, but accept it or not, it's the fact. And so all the power is in those who submit to him. And their submission gives him the power to sit on his throne. Now, if these women decide to withdraw their submission from him and they choose not to cooperate with him, all of his power leaves him. He's no longer a king. Now, with that being said, if you take that on the inside of every male that's walking this earth, when it comes to submission, and you go through a experience, so to say, like say if you're in a 7-Eleven or something like that, and something breaks out, you and this brother um go back and forth. Man, I'll do this, I'll do that. Somebody needs to let go before somebody ends up dead. Because this has happened to me numerous times. I mean, I was called gay simply because I held a door for a brother one time. It's coming out of 7-Eleven, and brother was walking right behind me, and simply because I didn't want the door to fall back on him, I held the door for him.
Wow.
And I don't need you holding the door for me. What's up? You some kind of faggot? I'm like, what? Now, see, I could have allowed my emotions to get, no, nigga, I ain't no faggot. I don't have to do that, because I know that I'm not, So
Right.
I'm like, okay, brother, I'm sorry. And I just walked on. And he just kept on talking, trying to provoke me. I'm sorry. I'm not an emotional guy. I'm an intellectual guy. So you can't provoke me.
And that type of thing too, just to, I just want to say this before I forget. To me, that shows that a male is not secure in his masculinity. For
Right.
him to even jump to that type of conclusion simply because you held the door open for him.
Hmm. Hmm. And see, to me, with that, I'm very much secure in mine. And so that's why I felt like I could do that. Now by him not feeling comfortable and me holding the door for him, who is in conflict? I mean, it's you that's in conflict. The only thing I'm doing is being kind to you. I'm being the gentleman that I am, you know? And it's a lot of our brothers out here that are angry, they are frustrated, and I've sat down out here and I've talked to gang members. I remember one time I sat up in the living room and I was talking to Six Bloods, and they're all sitting there, and this was back in 2007, and they're all sitting there, and everybody feels as though they have to keep up this um high toughness, this masculine energy for to impress each other, because basically they're afraid of each other, because they don't want, their buddies to think that they soft or anything like that. And to live like that has got to be insane. It has to be insane. And so once we all started talking, and I asked him, I said, where's all this anger coming from? Where's all this insecurity coming from? I ain't insecure. Yes, you are. That's the reason why you coming across like that. It's no reason. Let's just sit and talk. I didn't come here to criticize you or anything. Let's just get to the root of where all of this anger is coming from. Let's find out why you are sitting here calling yourself a blood. Let's talk about it. And so I went through everybody, and everybody had the same conclusion. It was the home front being broken up because either the father was there and abusive to their mother, or the father left. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. Every single blood in there broke down and cried. So beneath all of that exoskeleton garbage, all of this toughness and all that stuff, you're doing violence to yourself. This is what I was telling them. You're doing a lot of violence to yourself. Well, how are we doing violence to ourselves? I said, because you get up every single morning. You all do this. You get up every single morning and you put on this costume. They said, what costume you talking about? This scarf around your head. This sagging your pants, and you gotta wear, that's a costume. And then you have to have a personality that goes along with that. You have to toughen yourself up, and you have to get yourself together before you walk out into the world. So you're doing violence to yourself because you're altering who you really are on the inside. This is really not you. That's not you, and you know this. So what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of being yourself? They are afraid of being themselves. Tupac had that problem. That's why he was so conflicted. They said, well, Tupac was a Gemini. It didn't have anything to do with him being a Gemini. Tupac was conflicted with himself. And there's a whole lot of these young guys out here who are conflicted with themselves. And if you would just sit down and talk to them and tell them it's okay to talk, let's go deep inside and find out where all of this is coming from. And every single time you get down to the root, that's when the tears start going. I said, see, there it is right there. That's where you need to be. Because after the tears start flowing, once you start feeling that pain, that's the beginning of your healing. Because the reason why you're hurting is because you are healing. It is all the same movement. I'm hurting. It hurts. Of course it hurts. Isn't it a wonderful thing that it hurts? Because it means that you're healing. And so once you heal and the tears are dried up, then in your mind, I know why I'm here. Then you have to make the choice. Do you stay here or do you move forward?
Right.
And a whole lot of those guys are working right now. I'm not trying to sound like I'm a saint, because I'm not. It's just that if a whole lot of our brothers would do that with other brothers and even do it to themselves, then a whole lot of our women wouldn't be so abusive to them. Well, I wouldn't say abusive, but I don't think that the women would feel as though they have to try to remind these brothers that they need to be real men. And
Hmm.
so they're just trying to say, will you just be responsible? Will you be a man, please? Because I think that if any species, well, I don't want to call you species, I think that if anybody on this earth knows exactly the proper description of what a man is, it is a woman, because we all come from women. And so she knows exactly what you need to be and what you should be. It's just a whole lot of us brothers have been miseducated.
I do want to say this, when I
Go ahead.
think when she is balanced as well, because
Hmm.
there's definitely women out there who are misleading the men too.
Yeah.
So, I just want to add that when she is balanced within herself as well, then she knows.
Hmm.
Because, she wouldn't put up with, I would say that she wouldn't put up with a man who is abusive to her and doing all these things
Hmm.
either. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
she were in a better place within herself, she wouldn't tolerate that at all.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. And I even blame us for that, because I feel as though, like you mentioned to me earlier, as far as the flow is concerned, I think that if everyone would be responsible and being themselves, then things would flow better. But a whole lot of our brothers have failed in being responsible men, to the point to where these women who know what a man is supposed to be, if she feels that her man can't be who he's supposed to be, then she feels that she has to take on that role. you know so she has to alter herself, and the next thing you know, here's this woman walking around and she's more masculine than feminine.
right. And that, I think that's the dynamic that we see taking place in the United States in particular. Because I've talked to people who are not from here, and they see it too, and they're kind of like, what the hell is going on?
Hmm.
But when you know the history of just the country and what's happened here and what's happened here in regards to brown indigenous people in particular, then you see that you do see a lot of the women being pushed
Hmm.
into that masculine type of role because of the simple fact that there's not many men who are operating um, in that masculine role either.
Yeah.
There's no balance, and that's the thing though, regarding just like the feminine and masculine energy. It must be balanced within both men and women. Of course, if you're a male, that's going to be like that prevailing your prevailing energy, but that doesn't mean that it has to be the only um,
Right.
energy within yourself. Of course, if you are a female, the feminine energy, that's going to be like the prevailing energy, but that doesn't mean it has to be the only energy. And that doesn't mean that you have to completely like switch or whatever. It's about balance. And I
Right.
think that's what a lot of people in brown communities here don't necessarily understand.
Hmm.
They may see it as, oh, it's a gay thing or
Right.
whatever, and it's like, no, it's not.
Mm-mm.
It's not.
No.
So, I did have another question. You already touched on submission. That was one of the things. Um, I guess you kind of already touched on. I guess we touched on everything, really. The
Okay.
disorder of imbalance, the disorder that comes along with the imbalance. We've touched on that. Um, Ideals of femininity and masculinity versus truth. We've touched on that. If there's anything just before we go, 'cause let's see, it's been about an hour.
No, it doesn't even seem that long.
I know it doesn't, but yeah, we have about 5 more minutes.
Okay.
So just before we close out, is there anything that you would want to say um, to as a closing statement to help the men in
Mhm.
their relationships in regards to women and how they deal with women in particular.
I would tell them, do not be afraid to be yourself, period. Because once you understand exactly what you are, you already know who you are, but understand exactly what you are and don't be afraid of being yourself. Don't be afraid of crying, because that's cleansing. I ain't gonna cry because I'm a man. Oh, come on. Okay? You can cry. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a human side. Stop being afraid of being human. Stop being afraid of showing love and compassion even towards each other. And I'm not talking about a gay thing. You know, it's nothing wrong with you holding the door for each other. It's nothing wrong with you saying, "Good morning, brother. How you doing?" Instead of "This
Right,
suck." This suck. What's up, man? You don't have to always do that much violence to yourself. You know,
right.
just be yourself. Just
I
be
feel
yourself.
I wanted to add when it comes to their sons too.
Hmm.
Allow them to cry too. Don't try to suppress that within them so that they grow up and think that they have to be all super macho and, you know, all of that too. Like, allow your sons to cry. I've seen, I have a cousin and his little boy fell down once and he was like, "Man, get up, man, stop crying." And it's just like, okay, like
You,
he's little, you know what I mean? Like, let him cry.
that's doing more violence to him than his falling down. You do a lot of violence to yourself when you
Right.
suppress all of what your nature is. Stop doing all that violence to yourself.
Yep, that's so true. Is there anything else you wanted to add? I kind of cut in there.
No, no, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, that's pretty much it. I think that we just need to understand how very important it is for us to show um, our compassionate side, our more sensitive side. And sensitive doesn't necessarily always mean breaking down. I mean, you're very much aware of your surroundings. You're very much aware of yourself.
Right,
And when you feel as though it's time to demonstrate a part of yourself that is looked upon by the world as so-called soft, don't be afraid to express that because it's not going to do anything but add to your life. It's not going to take anything from you. It's going to actually add to your life.
right. And I want to say this for the women: a man crying does not make him weak either.
Mm-mm.
So don't think that, oh, he's a bitch, like, no, he's not. And I think that if you are blessed enough to have a man who's honest with you when it comes to his feelings and things like that, like, you should cherish that because a lot of men aren't.
Right.
So, I think that more women also need to be more accepting of that.
Hmm.
Um, because I have seen some women who will try to push that very toxic, imbalanced male narrative onto men too.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that women who do that definitely need to stop because that ends up hurting them as well.
Yes, it
That's not
does.
going to help their relationship with men either.
Hmm.
Um, and embracing, our feminine side, and not so much as, yes, we understand the dynamic of things that are going on in this country now, but for women of color, like, in this country, don't be afraid to cry yourselves. I've seen women who also view that as a weakness,
Hmm.
when women cry. So don't be afraid to just let it all out. I like that you brought that up because we did a blog on that called Embracing Your Weakness, embracing that moment in which you are weak so that you can learn from that moment.
Yes, I read it. I read it.
Yeah, so I'm going to post a link to that in the description box. But yeah, I mean, definitely women, you know, brown women in this country, like, do not be afraid to tap into your feminine side. Because now
Hmm.
we have a lot of women who are afraid to do that because they don't want to be viewed as weak by the men as well. And I've seen, oh, I want to bring this up before we close out. Someone posted a video. It was a clip of Nick Cannon. He was being interviewed by Vlad. I don't know if you've heard of like Vlad TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was being interviewed, and Vlad asked him if his woman told him she wants to be a full time mom and didn't want to go out and work, what would he do? And Nick Cannon said, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I don't see, what the issue is. And he said his little piece. And in the comments of this video clip that someone posted, there were men on there, not all the men, there was definitely a few that were on there and were like, oh no, she ain't gonna be lazy. Don't nobody want nobody lazy. Um, nah, she need to be bringing something in, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's another thing where that imbalance comes in. I think that was
Yes.
an imbalance as well because it's like he specifically said if she says she wants to be a full time mom, being a mom is not lazy at all.
Mm-mm.
And I, I was just like, well, let's challenge the men and see if they will push out a child and then devote themselves to that child's healthy development and then see if they think that's lazy.
Right.
So, like you said, it's harming them
Hmm.
because they don't even understand that. It was this lady, she commented on it and she was like, I'm West Indian. And, where I grew up, there were women who stayed in the homes and they were very family centered and they raised their children. And then there were a few who were nurses and things like that. She was like, and it wasn't looked at as anything lazy.
Hmm.
And she was sharing her experience. So, what would you say about that?
Well, we're talking about environment and tradition again, and a whole lot of that stuff that pulls women away from their divine feminine,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that makes women rigid, um, seemingly hostile. I say seemingly hostile because a lot of these women are misunderstood by a whole lot of men. Well, why is she always going off? She's this, she's that, she's bitter. No, it comes from her upbringing. You can't blame her because of her upbringing. This was her education. You might as well say
Mm-hmm.
she just so happened to accumulate it a certain area of that education that has made her this way. You know, so it pretty much goes back to us choosing who we are and how we want to be as human beings. The same as I did when I was a kid. I was surrounded by information, and the majority of the information that I threw away came from males. You know what I'm saying? And most of the information that I embraced, uh, um, I learned from women, and that's one of the primary reasons why I'm a gentleman today. I'm an intelligent um, man. I'm a gentleman. I'm a sensitive man, but I'm a warrior all at the same time. So I have a balance in me that's always been present, and so I consider myself a complete human being, and I don't really have a problem with learning more and more and more, and not stuck inside of some box
Right.
that society tells me, well, this is what it's like to be a man. This is what it means to be a man. You're not putting me in no boxes. You're not putting me in no cages.
Right. To kind of add to that, like, or to my statement that I
Hmm.
just made, that's kind of like what I'm seeing as far as the male centered information, just very like a patriarchal type of way of viewing things. It's just like what they don't understand is that when you try to strip that female of her feminine aspect, then that's when you do get that very type of masculine type of, you know, energy and things like
Mhm.
that from her. And
Right.
then the men over here want to complain, well, she's too masculine. She's not as feminine as, a white woman or
Hmm.
whoever else, But it's like you don't really want her to be that way. You don't want to
Right.
allow her to be that way. You view something as being a full-time mother as laziness. So you're viewing something, taking care of her children or taking care of the home or things like that, or wanting to, what if she wants to just garden, something like that.
Right.
You view it as a weakness. So you're viewing femininity as a weakness, but then you're complaining that she's not feminine enough. And that's the confusion that a lot of the sisters over here are seeing in the men as well.
Hmm.
So,
It all goes back to what my post has said, that she's not going to respect you if you're more emotional and less intellectual, because she knows that her man is responsible. If you are responsible and doing everything that you're supposed to do in that household, then you don't have to ever worry about her losing her feminine nature. Because if you're doing everything that you know you're supposed to be, that puts her in the position to where she can be the woman that she's meant to be.
exactly, exactly. So that was a great, great closing statement. And I just want to thank you for joining us tonight. I really enjoyed the conversation. It had definitely a lot of wisdom that you shared. So I really appreciate that.
Well, I would like to say how very honored I am to even be here, because I've been looking at your post for a long time, and I'm like, I would love to dialogue with her. So I'm honored. I'm truly honored, and I'm looking forward to more dialogue whenever you want. It doesn't matter.
Yes, yes, definitely. That would be great. All
Okay.
right. So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. For more types of topics such as this, check out our YouTube channel for other things, blogs, and things like that. Any type of various forms of healing, check out our website, daughterdivine9.com. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And have a good night, everyone.
Yeah. Take care.